One of the fears, Sanjeev, that you're highlighting in the budget is about global oil prices and the impact that this could have on India. We're already seeing the stress, the strain between Russia and Ukraine, and crude is now $90 a barrel. The government has held back, even though you won't accept this on record, raising oil prices in India, petrol prices, because of the election. But once UP is over, come the 10th of March, given the fact that crude internationally is under pressure, would that then lead me to fear that once the elections in Uttar Pradesh and elsewhere are over, we could actually see a sharp spurt, which is in some senses beyond your control?
Well, we have highlighted the fact that international inflation is an issue. It's just not all about oil prices, but you're seeing high inflationary impact happening in developed countries, advanced countries as well. It's happening from supply side shortages in chips, container shortages of various kinds, and of course, as you mentioned, oil prices. Now, obviously, oil prices is notoriously difficult to predict, so I have not attempted to do that. While we are talking about $90 to a barrel today, let me remind you, just 18 months ago, that was below $20. So, I can't base my future views based on trying to predict oil prices. All that we have done is we presented what we think is a reasonable assumption in the range of $70 to $75 as a part of the assumption, and we have carried on. Now, obviously, there is a lot of unpredictability that remains looking into the future, whether it's geopolitics in Eastern Europe or East Asia or climate change and so on. And one of the themes of the economic survey as a result of that is not so much about forecasting the future, but it's about how do you make policy in an environment of uncertainty. And there's a very significant section on agile policy making, i.e. how do you deal with high frequency data. There's a long section on supply side measures, whether it's on resilience or flexibility. So I think the key message of the economic survey is, here is the forecast based on these assumptions. But we understand the world is uncertain. But so the real thrust of economic survey is about how do you make policy for this uncertain world, not about getting tied up with the forecast as such, but about how do you have responsive economic policy while maintaining certain amount of safety nets for the vulnerable sections and so on. So really the economic survey is about that. And I do hope you will read some of the sections on barbell strategy, agile, and so on. That is, they've given significant segments of that.
Sanjeev, one of the points that perhaps our viewers would want your views on, this is the third pandemic survey. The government, both at the center and the states, suffered huge revenue losses in the first year of the pandemic. It picked up in the second. This year, by all accounts, is a bumper year as far as revenues are concerned. What does that mean? Is Bharat Sarkar now finally out of the losses that it has suffered, and can it therefore be in a better position to spend in the future?
Since I was the co-author of the last several economic survey, let me say that this is not the third COVID survey. This is the second year into COVID that we have talked about COVID. The one in 1920 was presented in February when COVID was not really a major issue. So let me say that obviously we will be taking into account a large amount of evolving situation on various fronts, and much of what this survey does is talks about how you respond to unexpected turns of fate, so to speak. So one of the ways in which you deal with it is, of course, the use of fiscal policy. And the point that is made is that, as it happens to be, that the Indian government took very conservative and controlled approach towards fiscal policy, and that has stood us in very good stead, because basically where it was necessary, we went out there and spent, whether it's on safety nets of various kinds for vulnerable sections, providing free food or providing liquidity for MSMEs and so on, so that kind of safety net. But other times when the opportunity arrives where they could open up the economy, ramp up demand using capital expenditure on infrastructure and so on. So the key thing here has been the issue of agile policy making. And that has been possible because we have had the space to do it. And revenues reviving gives us, again, space to respond where necessary. We can use other policies too. The monetary policy is also there, and that was used too. We have supply-side measures that was also used. But since you specifically mentioned fiscal policy, yes, that was also used too. But the key thing here is to respond according to the evolving situation.